let's kick things off. Our first speaker is Dan Levin, who is the COO of Box. Dan, really interesting guy. He's the kind of guy whose career could have been a movie. And he spent 13 years in venture-backed startups, including senior executive roles at Replay TV, Guest Connect, and he's co-founded Books That Work. After his run with multiple startups, Dan was at Intuit for over 6 years in a variety of roles, including SVP of the Small Business Group, VP of Quicken Health Group, and VP of Product Management. Today, Dan's role is the Chief Operating Officer at Box, a cloud from personal to enterprise-grade computing, and dare I say, a cloud platform. Let's give it up, a warm Kansas City welcome for Dan Levin, the CEO of Box.
Write it, cut it, paste it, save it, load it, check it, quick rewrite it, plug it, pay it, burn it, rip it, drag it, drop it,
Good morning, Kansas City. Do I have a microphone? Can anybody hear me? Hello. All right. How we all doing? For those of you who don't know, Box is a cloud-based content sharing and collaboration service. Think Dropbox, but for businesses. And I'm not going to spend any time talking about Box for the next 40 minutes or so. So if you want to know about Box, my email address and Twitter handle are on the screen, and you're more than welcome to contact me after the fact. But I want to talk about the future. I want to talk about why you guys should be pumped to be doing what you're doing and to be here meeting all these amazing people. Because the change that's going on in our business and in our world is really extraordinary. It's going to have huge impacts on the way we do business, on the way we live, and on the way every industry around the world is run. And I want to talk a little bit about what's going on, why we think this time is so amazing, and about two of the big ramifications that we see being driven by the change that's happening in the world today. The old world was simple. And I don't know how many of you actually think about the enterprise, the way businesses operate, but that's what I'm really focused on. That's what Box is all about. We do have a consumer service, but our business is selling to companies. And in the old world, if you were a company of any size whatsoever, you had two primary vendors. You bought all of your employee-facing stuff from Microsoft, right? Office, Exchange, SQL Server, all that stuff. And you bought all your back-end stuff from somebody like SAP or Oracle. And maybe you had occasionally some other technology thrown in here or there, but those two vendors were your primary vendors. And it was a really simple world, and it sort of had to be that way. Because technology wasn't designed to integrate cross-platform, cross-environment, cross-vendor. The stuff ran on-prem in a data center on big hardware. And if you wanted anything to ever work together, if you wanted Active Directory to talk to your desktop so you could authenticate users, you pretty much had to use a single suite from a single vendor. That is all about to change in a big way. IDC just announced that they expect that by 2016, the x86 platform will be down to roughly 25% market share. That is an extraordinary statistic, from homogeneity to heterogeneity. From a basically unified world of a desktop PC on every desk to a brave new world where everything is going to be different. Last year, mobile devices outsold computers in the US for the first time. This year, there will be more tablets sold in North America to businesses than laptop computers. And that has huge ramifications, particularly in a couple of dimensions, the two dimensions I'm going to talk about today. Roy Amara said, we tend to overestimate the importance of technology change in the near term and underestimate it in the long term. And this may be one of these things. It may be that we're getting all hot and bothered about nothing. But when I look around at my colleagues, when I look around at the businesses that we sell to, I see a fundamentally different workplace than I saw 5 years ago. How many people in this room have an Apple device on them right now? Like half, maybe 2/3 of us. And I bet most of the rest of you have an Android device. Neither of those things existed 5 years ago, remember. A phone was something you made phone calls on. RIM is going to go down in the annals of technology businesses as one of the greatest destroyers of enterprise value in all time. I think their biggest competitor is going to be Nokia, actually. And one of the co-CEOs of RIM a couple years ago, right after the iPhone came out, he said, these Apple guys don't get it. The killer app on a phone is telephony. This app shit is for the birds. He just didn't understand. This thing is not a phone. It's a computer. I was at Princeton in the late 80s, and they put together something called the massive memory machine. It was an experiment to see what would happen if you put so much random access memory into one computer that a programmer never had to worry about running out of it. They had Digital Equipment Corporation, anybody remember them? Long gone, bought by Compaq. They had DEC build them a custom VAX. That was the computer of the day. The thing was about the size of this stage. It was 2 huge custom backplanes. You know, they had guys literally in white coats assembling this thing. They managed to put, hold your breath, 128 megabytes of memory into a single computer. Unheard of. Unlimited RAM. You know, this thing has got voice recognition. It does video. It's a much more powerful computer than anything we had 15 years ago, even things we called supercomputers. It's going to change everything, and it's going to usher in the post-PC era, because most businesses today have at least 5 operating systems in place. And that's going to change the world. It's going to change everything, at least for a while. Now, technology tends to go in these waves, right? We get these waves of everybody solving for the best point solution they can find when a new technology comes out, and you have to take advantage of that technology, and then eventually there's consolidation, and we get back to a smaller number of vendors. But right now, we're in the exploding phase. These new technologies are creating untold opportunities for all of us, all of you, to take advantage of. The post-PC world represents a displacement of computing from the traditional 30-year-old Wintel architecture to a whole new world in the cloud. And the cloud is just way better. It's better on every dimension for everything, with the possible exception of the Department of Defense. And I spent a lot of time hanging out with the CIOs of banks and various military organizations, and they're still a little freaked, and it'll take them a while to get over it. But 20 years from now, there isn't going to be such a thing as a corporate data center. Why should there be? Box is a 600-person company. We're growing very rapidly. We have a big data center in our headquarters building. It is full of computers. None of them run any IT software. There are 4 not 4 racks, 4 one-inch slots in our data center dedicated to IT. And it's all network perimeter protection. Our entire IT suite runs in the cloud. NetSuite, Zendesk, Zuora. Obviously, we don't have any file servers. We use Box for that. That is the wave of the future. When you look at the way Pandora runs their business, the way Spotify runs their business, none of us have a data center that runs IT technology. But today, everybody has one, and that shift is going to be monumental, and it's going to create untold new markets and opportunities. In part, it's people like us. I count myself in the millennial generation, even though I probably shouldn't. But we have a different expectation about technology, right? We believe Twitter is software. We believe Facebook is software. And we are taking over the world. As the millennial worker moves into industry, we bring these expectations. We shouldn't have to read a manual. We shouldn't have to wait around for somebody to take 2 days to figure out how to fix some piece of technology. We're pulling these devices, these mobile devices, into our offices, into the workplace. When I showed up at Box, something happened to me for the very first time. Now, Box was founded by 2 19-year-olds. It's very much a millennial generation business. They sat me down at my desk. They said, what kind of laptop do you want? A Mac? If you could get a Mac, you could have an Air or a MacBook Pro, or you could have a PC if you're a weirdo. Actually, interestingly, most of the developers were still on PCs at that point, Lenovo laptops. And that was it. And it took me about a week to realize there was something missing. There was no phone on my desk. It was the first time in my professional career I had shown up and I had not been given a phone. just a computer. So I went to the IT guy, there was only one, and I said, dude, you forgot to give me a phone. And he looked at me like I was a space alien, literally. And he said, why would you want a phone? Don't you have a cell phone? We only give desk phones to the sales guys. That's a different mindset. That's a different world. People talk about bring your own device to work. They talk about the consumerization of the enterprise. None of that matters. What matters is, this is my device. I use it for my personal stuff. I use it for my business stuff. I expect my business to support my doing that. Same with my iPad, same with my Fire, same with my Motorola Android tablet, if any of you have seen one of those. Pretty scary. There's this completely different set of expectations being drawn into the workforce. And at the same time, we're moving into a world where our old conceptualization of an office is changing very fundamentally. It used to be you could go to Chicago, you go to the Sears Tower, everybody who worked for Sears was there in one big building. The Transamerica Pyramid in San Francisco, same deal. That's just not true anymore. We all live a virtualized, globalized life, both personally and professionally. That means we need to be able to access our stuff, our applications, our content, our email from wherever we are on any device. And old technologies just don't support that. On-premise systems that live behind the firewall are crippling to a modern business. And they're going to all be replaced because we have to be able to access our stuff from wherever we are if we're going to compete. I just got back from a CIO event in Dallas. The Dr. Pepper Snapple CIO, not exactly a modern technology company, right? They sell sugar water. Spent half an hour describing this amazingly cool system they've built for the guys who drive trucks. I don't know how many of you know about the beverage industry, but every convenience store, every grocery store, every gas station, some dude shows up in a truck every day or every 2 days and goes in and replenishes all the drinks. In fact, there are like 6 of them, one from Pepsi, one from Coke, one from whatever your local juice manufacturer is, et cetera. These guys are now carrying around iPads instead of paper, and everything they need to know about how much inventory this store needs or what display is supposed to be there is on their iPad. Truck drivers. Legacy technology is too slow to deploy, it's too hard to maintain, it's too complicated to set up. It ties in customers with vendors too tightly in ways that they don't like. It drives lousy adoption among employees. How many of you use some unsanctioned IT tool to help you get your job done? Let's say Dropbox, just for example. Yes, we all use Dropbox, right? No comments about whether Dropbox is the sort of thing you should be using in a business environment, but I think if you have an IT guy, he would probably freak if he knew that you were using Dropbox. But we all do it because, frankly, SharePoint is a piece of shit, and it doesn't help me get my job done, and I'm going to use Dropbox instead. The problem is, in the old world, I can't get to my stuff, I can't integrate across applications, I can't see what's being done, I can't share with people who aren't my colleagues, and it's got to get fixed. And so this change is coming. These mobile devices are going to take over the world, and what all of us need to figure out is, what the heck does it mean? How is it going to change our lives? What opportunities is it going to create for us? And I'm going to try and talk about 2 of those things today quickly. And I'm going to try to keep half an eye on the time if I can. So the first one is, it's going to be a heterogeneous world. And it's going to be heterogeneous not only as to hardware platform, right? We're going to have ARM devices and Intel devices and lots of other form factors that we've never seen before coming into the market. But it's also going to be heterogeneous as to the underlying operating system. In the old world, every piece of end-user computing equipment on the planet basically ran Windows. The only heterogeneity was, do you have Windows 7 or Windows Vista? In the new world, almost every business has got at least 5 operating systems, right? Android, iOS, Mac OS, Windows of some shape, and Linux. And my guess is there are going to be more operating systems coming in the future. So in the post-PC world, it's not about hardware, and it's not about operating systems, it's about applications. If you think about the way you all run your lives, because you're forward-thinking people, you run your life today by application, not by platform. And in fact, if you survey people, what you'll find out is that they like using tablets for productivity applications. In fact, they like tablets better than laptops, and that makes total sense, right? The iPad is not a great content creation device, it's a great content consumption device, though, and much of what we all do that's productivity related is about content consumption. So, if you go to one of my favorite applications websites, Evernote's website, you don't see any mention of like Windows. They don't think in those terms particularly. They've got instead this long list of devices and operating systems that they support. And the problem with that is that means that Evernote is basically putting a layer across all of these platforms and all of these operating systems, and that results in your having a little world for Evernote. It stores all of its stuff in its own silo. You have to log into Evernote separately from any other application, etc. And that's not going to last. That can't last. It's very badly broken. I'm sure you're as frustrated as I am with the fact that each application on my phone or my iPad that wants me to authenticate, unless I can use Facebook Connect to do it, it wants me to authenticate using its own authentication mechanism. It wants to store its content in its own silo. And that's never going to work. This concept that we call an operating system is going to have to change. Right, an operating system is a collection of software that manages computer hardware resources and provides common services for computer programs, according to Wikipedia. And in the old world, what that meant was, on this particular piece of hardware, I had a little resource and task management tool called an operating system that I talked to the world through. But if my view is not about devices anymore, but it's about applications across a bunch of devices and across a bunch of hardware operating systems, I still need all the things that my operating system used to do for me. I still want to have a single identity. I still want all my stuff to be stored in a single place. And so this world that we used to live in, where we had lots of applications, one user, lots of applications, one operating system, and one hardware platform, is moving into this new world where we have one user but lots of applications on lots of hardware platforms and lots of operating systems. And I think the next generation of that is going to be the development of some kind of, essentially, a meta operating system. An operating system that provides all of the things that we want and need, provides identity management, including groups, provides some kind of permission management architecture that spans applications, provides a storage architecture that allows me to store all my stuff in one place, even if I'm accessing it through lots of different applications. And does all of this completely independent of the hardware platform and the hardware operating system that I'm using. So this is one of the great changes that we expect to happen in the next 5 or 10 years. We think the world is going to move through this application-centric phase and into a world that's more like what we do with Facebook Connect, where we have one identity and we can apply that identity in lots of different places. But it's probably not going to be Facebook Connect in businesses. Because businesses are going to want whatever this thing is to talk to their Active Directory integration and talk to all of their enterprise security capabilities and all that kind of stuff. So I have no idea what this means for those of you who are building consumer stuff. But for those of you who are building stuff for businesses, this shift into this sort of meta operating system world is going to mean fundamental change in the way we think about applications, operating systems, hardware, and it's going to create lots and lots of new business opportunities that we're all going to try and take advantage of. One example of that is what we're doing with our OneCloud initiative, which is a program that a couple of hundred of iOS and Android developers have participated in that lets them store all their stuff in Box. And that's good for businesses because they can security audit just one vendor, they can come visit the physical site of just one vendor, and they don't have to deal with 50 different iOS apps all having their own data center somewhere. So that's the first big thing. And I don't know what it means for you, but I think you should be contemplating it as a future reality, assume it as a future reality, and try to figure out how it plays with whatever you're trying to build or whatever decisions you're trying to make. The second big reality that this change in mobility is going to drive is a fundamental shift in the definition of a knowledge worker. So in the 50s, knowledge workers wore white coats, and there were about 50,000 of them worldwide, and they lived in these huge data centers with raised floors and air conditioning, and those were all the knowledge workers that there were. And Microsoft came along and said, that's not going to work for me. We want to drive the idea that there's going to be a computer on every desk. And they created, out of whole cloth, basically, about 1 billion knowledge workers over the course of 20 years. 25, 30 years. And those people are our market. You know, the people who use computers are the people we sell stuff to. But the convergence of the cloud and social and mobile is changing everything about IT. It's really going to have a huge impact on the way the world works, and it's driving tremendous change even today in the kinds of people who use technology. So it used to be that technology was about executives, it was about engineers, it was about marketing people, it was about salespeople, and that will absolutely still be true. This is a great quote from Nationwide Insurance. The only device that our CEO carries now is an iPad. And we see that in a lot of places. Mayor Bloomberg in New York, this is a great story. So he goes around and he speaks a lot in public. And so he's got a set of speeches that he likes to deliver. And he used to go to these various venues, and there were 2 people who were assigned to follow him around carrying a laptop and a printer. And they would go wherever he went. Like they had their own car, and they would just follow him around because the guy was constantly changing his speeches. And so he'd be standing at a podium like this with a pencil and a piece of paper. He's reading through his speech. He's like, shit, I don't like that. He crosses it out. And when the speech is done, he'd hand it to these 2 guys. And they would amend the speech on the laptop, print out a new version on the printer, put it in the folder, and when he got to his next venue, he'd have the new version of his speech. Modern technology. So now he just does it on an iPad. And when he wants to change something, he uses iAnnotate or something on the iPad, and then the guys who are following him around, they're still following him around with a laptop, although they don't have to be where he is anymore because the network provides for distance. They actually update the speech, and then the new version just shows up on his iPad, and away you go. And that's true. It's happening in boardrooms. It's happening all over the place. We're all knowledge workers. We're all using these mobile devices. The thing that's changing is now we've got a whole new group of people who are starting to use these mobile devices. People that we didn't think of as knowledge workers before. People like that Dr. Pepper truck driver, who we used to think was a blue-collar guy who didn't know a computer from a hole in the wall. Maybe played COD at home or something. But now, he's a knowledge worker and he's walking around with an iPad to do his job. It's happening in airlines. Pilots and mechanics are using technology in the cockpit, in the maintenance hangar, using technology to read regulatory documents, to read FAA-issued instructions, to read charts when they're flying around. Guys in construction, guys with hard hats and boots and slogging around in mud are now carrying mobile devices. We've got a customer who is in the business of engineering waterproofing material on roofs. And they have issued iPads to every one of their quality inspectors, guys who used to walk around with clipboards. And now they can take a photograph of what's going on, they can see the plans for the building while they're on the rooftop, and they can communicate in real time with the general contractor, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I need to see instead. In the utility business, you know, guys climbing up wooden poles to string electrical wire, guys digging holes in roads to go after the pipes. They're now using augmented reality on tablets to understand where those